It's finally time. Let's do a game preview. The Cincinnati Bengals host the Arizona Cardinals in preseason week 1.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your Cincinnati Bengals every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And we appreciate those of you who make us your first listen. Love keeping you company on your way to work or at work or on your morning run or whatever it is. And well, James, we finally have football to talk about, and we've had training camp to talk about, but we finally have a real, actual NFL game for the first time since February to talk about. And while there might not be a ton of starters playing in this game, there are so many things to be excited for as the Bengals are trying to identify which depth pieces will make the roster and can be contributors in 2022. And there are some starting jobs that are, well, they're still up for grabs, at least nominally, on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. I think in special teams, where we'll get at the end of the show, there are some actual much more competitive competitions, I would say, but maybe we get surprised. And of course, we're talking of left guard. Left guard, the only starting spot really up for competition on the offensive or defensive side of the ball right now. And Jackson Carman seems like the odds-on favorite going into the preseason, but this is where Cordell Volson and others, will have their chance to make their mark and show that there should be a real competition here, or for Jackson Carman to simply separate himself and say, you know what, I was a second-round pick for a reason, and prove that he's worth that value. But for my money, James, that is the prominent storyline to watch, or player to watch, competition to watch early in this first preseason game, because Jackson Carman will be going up against not the best from the Arizona Cardinals. And given that he will be going up against the best from other teams, he should play very well. He should be good in the early going of this preseason game.
By the way, you said finally football is here, by the way. It's the shortest offseason we've ever had to deal with.
Still feels long to me, James.
Is very relative. Anyways,
always feels long to me.
I didn't want to interrupt you. Anyways, I agree with you, though. Excited that football is back. And yeah, look, when we're looking at this roster, Eli Apple is cornerback 2. There is no position battle there. He's played pretty well throughout camp. And when he's gotten beaten, it's been by a top 3, top 5. Let's go really low for Jamar Chase, top 10 receiver in the NFL. So you take that from your second outside cornerback. What other position battle is there? There's rotation battles, but we know who's going to start at defensive tackle, Reeder and Hill, right? We know who's going to start at linebacker. We know who's going to start at all these spots. When Bates comes back, he's going to start at safety. Left guard is the spot. We've spent a lot of time talking about it, whether or not they should go get another veteran, whether or not Jackson Carman can fill a role that the Bengals have been looking to fill for quite some time, in a role that really hurt them last season when it mattered most. And so I can buy into Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Lyle Collins, and Jonah Williams. But who are you buying at left guard? I agree with you. I think in an ideal world, Jackson Carman would flex on a 4th rounder named Cordell Volson from North Dakota State and say, I went to Clemson. I turned down Ohio State. I was a 5-star. I was this stud. I won a national championship at the D1 level. And I'm going to ball out here now that I'm on the left side. That's what you want to see. And he is in better shape. And so we'll see if he's capable of doing that. Because if he doesn't, in the other side of it, the pushback would be, well, you want all these guys to perform at a really, really high level. I just think that's unrealistic for them to have Akeem Adeniji and Cordell Volson and Jackson Carman to all hit and all be playing at like a B+ starting guard level in the NFL. I don't see that. So I'm just hoping Carman gets to like a B, because if not, and they're all at that C- level, well, then that stinks. And it feels like you're kind of moving in sand here, standing in quicksand at the left guard spot. And do they only need to be average there if the other spots stay healthy? Sure. But we've already seen some nicks to the right side of that offensive line that they've overcome throughout camp. So hopefully we can see Jackson Carman or one of these guys really emerge and play above average for most of this season. And that starts on Friday. And that's going to be the spot where watching the most on Friday night against the Arizona Cardinals.
And the thing about this particular matchup, I referenced this yesterday. I talked about it a little bit earlier on today's show as well, is they're not getting, like I said, they're not getting the best from the Cardinals. These are guys that started for the Bengals last year that are going to be playing in this game. Hakeem Adeniji is going to be playing in this game. Isaiah Prince is going to be playing in this game. Jackson Carman, Trey Hill, unfortunately not Deontay Smith, but those are 4 guys that played a lot for the Bengals last year in various spots. Less for Trey Hill, but Hakeem Adeniji, Isaiah Prince, both played in the Super Bowl. And so if these are your Super Bowl starters and now they're going up against Arizona's, we were told 3rd stringers. We were told that the 2nd stringers aren't even playing in this game for the Cardinals by Alex Clancy, host of Locked On Cardinals. So if that's the case, you would hope your Super Bowl starters and presumptive 2nd stringers start this game really strong. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm looking for. That's my standard for Jackson Carman, Hakeem Adeniji, and Isaiah Prince, because they should be able to handle that level of player. And if that level of player is giving them significant problems, then there's concern, right? Just setting this expectation before the game so we can look back on this and say, oh, yeah, they were fine. Okay, that's what you should expect. Oh, they had issues. Okay, now we need to really reevaluate things and figure out what's going on here.
Now, the one thing I will say, because look, especially if Carman struggles with most of the starters not playing, it's not like he's used to playing alongside whoever lines up at left tackle first. Yeah.
So communication issues can be forgiven, perhaps.
Potentially, right? So we'll preface it with that. But to your point, yeah, if Jackson Carman's going to be an average starting guard, well, guess what? He should look very, very good on Friday. And I want him to probably play the first half. I think that's fair. You play alongside Brandon Allen. Brandon Allen is a valuable piece. He's going to be the Bengals backup if he's healthy. You want to keep him upright, so you don't want to put him behind a line that's just going to get, destroyed. Not that any of these linemen should just get destroyed by the Cardinals, but still, third stringers especially. Sheesh. But yeah, this is a game where Carman should feast. If he's really put all the time in, and he does look good, no doubt about it, looks good. Now, will it translate? It's a big question, and not just for Jackson Carman, but it certainly starts with him on Friday night against the Cardinals.
Yeah, and we'll get a better feel for how this depth is performing as well. Is a guy like Ben Brown pushing Trey Hill? Is Cordell Volson actually pushing Jackson Carman? Is Lamont Gilliard, who's been getting reps all over the offensive line? We haven't really talked about him very much. They got him off waivers from Arizona, last year. And so is he going to be pushing for a 2nd string job? And where does the competition kind of fall on the offensive line? And it's not like the 3rd stringers for the Cardinals are necessarily terrible. If you go look, Christian Ringo, Jonathan Ledbetter, Antoine Woods, Myjai Sanders, Cameron Thomas, the rookie 3rd round picks from the Cardinals, these guys are all going to play. So there should be some at least talented players, some young players on the field for the Cardinals. It's not like they're only going to be playing the practice squad guys. But again, if you're the Bengals and you're playing your backups and potentially one starter, you should hope to see a disparity in skill level. And so when we're talking about the offensive line, that's probably what we're looking for. And who's going to play left tackle without Deontay Smith out there? I assume Adeniji might get a start, but once Adeniji has to move out to a tackle position, who's playing right guard now? So there will be opportunities for some guys. Maybe Cordell Volson gets a start at right guard and moves to left guard for the second half. Could see that happen.
By the way,
full game of reps or 3
quarters. I was
going
to say, get him some reps. I would not be against that at all. Get the big man some reps.
Going to be a lot of reps for some tight ends, for some young players on defense, and that might be more exciting because then we're talking about upside and not potential downside or potential risk. And certainly we hope that it's upside for Carman and not the other way around. But a lot of young guys that are going to be fun to watch in their first preseason action. And for some, their second preseason action. We'll talk about those coming up next.
But first, a word from BetOnline. And you might think that Joe Burrow is going to win MVP. By the way, he wore a backwards hat on Wednesday at practice. So right before we went on today, I was like, you know what? I'm throwing on the backwards hat if you're watching on YouTube. If not, well, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. Backwards hat James is here. And so is BetOnline, which is a one-stop shop for all things sports wagering. So if you think Joe Burrow is going to be the MVP this year, we'll go there and place a wager. Maybe you think Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase is going to be offensive player of the year. I think that's a realistic, I don't know about expectation, but it would be a realistic bet. We can get pretty good odds right now at BetOnline. And it isn't just NFL, Major League Baseball, UFC, and the NBA, so much more, including golf. So don't delay. Go to BetOnline right now. Sign up for free. I've won money at BetOnline, and you can too. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Young players are always the name of the game in preseason, at least in the modern NFL, where starters play less and less for teams that aren't located in the northeast corner of Ohio. And for the Bengals, that means that some rookies are going to get a chance to get some extended reps. And most of those rookies this year are on the defensive side of the ball. Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter, Tyrekus Tisdale, Jeff Gunter. I went out of order there a little bit, but you get the idea. There are a lot of guys on this team that are going to have an opportunity to show what they can do again against potentially some fringe of roster guys for the Cardinals. So could see some big performances. I think that would be a lot of fun for guys like Zach Carter, who's going to have a rotational role on this team, and for Dax Hill, who is going to have a rotational role on this team, and for now has been getting all of the first team reps in Jesse Bates' absence. Also, college free agents and guys fighting for roster spots outside of the offensive line. We'll get into all of those as well. But let's start with the first 3 rounds of picks, right? Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter going to get a lot of go early in this game and get a chance to show what they can do as potential rotational pieces, potential challengers for starting jobs later in the year, depending on which player you're talking about. And it's going to be really exciting to see these guys in stripes for the first time.
Yeah, you really want to see them flash, and you want to see it translate, right? Zach Carter has been tough to block, certainly looks the part. I think he's added a little bit of weight. People were concerned about that. Looks good. And so he's been disruptive. Can he continue that in a real NFL game? Well, Cam Taylor-Britt, and he's going to have to work on his consistency. We know that. He's had an up and down training camp. That's part of life as a rookie, especially when you're a cornerback going against these receivers. Can we see those flashes, that athleticism, and see it translate to the game? I think we're going to. I think we're going to see Dax Hill make some plays. And who knows how much versatility we see. He's been really lining up at safety. They may move him around a little bit, but I think this is about going to, really getting his feet wet, getting him as comfortable as possible at that spot. And I'm excited to see Dax. Everybody knows if you listen to this podcast, how I feel about him. I think he's a baller. I thought he was a steal at 31. And so it's going to be fun to watch all 3 guys play. And like you said, or like I said, all 3 of them have flashed at points during camp and shown what they could do. And now we'll get to see it in a game that might not count at the end of the day, but is going to feel like it counts to them because it's their NFL debut. And they're going to put that jersey on for the first time and go out there and play in front of fans, which is really, really exciting. I can't imagine that feeling as a young player, and they're going to experience that on Friday night.
Yeah, and I wonder who their opposition will be. It'll be very curious for me to see who's actually playing for the Cardinals. Is it Trace McSorley at quarterback? Are they just going to save Colt McCoy for later in the preseason? That's what we've been led to believe. Does Greg Dortch get on the field as the first receiver? Like, is he the best Cardinals receiver that's going to play in this game? We're not going to see AJ Green. We're not going to see Hollywood Brown. We're not going to see DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. He's suspended. But like Victor Bolden, Marcel Aitman, Javonta Payton, I don't know who these people are. And that's probably true of the Cardinals, looking at the guys that are going to be playing for the Bengals at some spots as well. But regardless of who it is, These are players that were good enough at their craft in college to earn a roster spot in training camp for an NFL team. So getting NFL caliber competition for these guys, talking about Cam Taylor-Britt and Dax Hill, is still going to be a good opportunity. But like you said, James, I'm looking for them to flash. I'm looking for them to make some big plays and show that they too belong in the NFL and were drafted for a reason.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's not just those guys either. I mean, you look up and down this draft class, and obviously we talked about Cordell Volson, but Jeff Gunter is a guy that I've noticed practice after practice after practice. And initially, especially with someone like Gunter, 7th rounder, has a good practice. You can mention it, but you don't want to overhype it, right? And there are people every day, it's like, oh man, they had a really good practice. You know what? A lot of guys have good practices. And can they do it tomorrow? And can they do it tomorrow? And he's strung together multiple now where I think it is worthy of mentioning and bringing up and now seeing if it translates. Is he disruptive? Because here's the thing, as a 7th rounder, I don't know what to expect. He might be, he might not be disruptive against these guys, regardless of who's on the Arizona Cardinals, the 3rd string, right? Because he's a 7th round pick. Everybody passed on him at probably 6 times or, around that, depending on how many picks they had. So maybe he's a steal, maybe he's a hidden gem. And that's the exciting part about the preseason is someone like Jeff Gunter could emerge and really become one of these, and I don't even want to say preseason legends or anything like that, because the Bengals have had those over the years. But if he gets a sack or is disruptive on Friday night, you're going to be like, well, can he contribute this year? Like for going from 7th round pick to, could he get a couple quarterback hits here and there and make quarterbacks uncomfortable? Is that possible? That would be a nice feeling to get out of a 7th rounder. So that's someone, number 93 for those wondering, number 93 on Friday night. I'll have my eyes on him as well.
And it's an opportunity for him as well. It's an opportunity for him to show that he should be the 5th or 6th or however many defensive edge defenders they keep. Khalid Kareem is going to probably play in this game and have to show that, yeah, I'm still worth that roster spot. But Wyatt Hubert is potentially dealing with an injury at this point. Noah Spence was a street free agent last year who's on the practice squad. So can Gunter get ahead of those guys? 7th round pick in Wyatt Hubert last year, another street free agent in Raymond Johnson III. Can Jeff Gunter establish that he is or isn't ahead of those guys based on his productivity in what I assume will be extended run in this preseason game? Will we see much from Tyler Shelvin staying on the defensive line? 4th round pick last year and another previous year draft pick we'll talk about in just a minute. But Shelvin's the guy that they've been easing back in after he's been dealing with an injury. I think that he in some ways is really fighting for a roster spot himself, because they still need to see more from him. They need to see him play at a much more consistent level. And beyond that, the one that I think many of us are sorry. You want to hit on Shelvin before we?
Yeah. Well, Zach Taylor talked, and it was not a ringing endorsement. Grim. Here's the thing: is when a coach brings up, he's injured, and so we don't have a full evaluation. That's one thing, right? And he's not necessarily wrong. He battled that wrist this offseason, but he is practicing. And 2, he's playing Friday. And so if he's saying, he's injured, we don't have the full evaluation, but he's playing. Well, guess what? Injured guys, they don't play. So he might be dealing with a little something, but he's going to play. And so, yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. I think Tyler Shelvin's going to have to show something on Friday night. I'm sure he knows it. And the Bengals coaching staff, when Zach says that, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, let's see what he's got. So
Taylor generally very effusive in praise for his players. And when you don't get that for a guy like Tyler Shelvin, it does ring some alarm bells, I guess, a little bit for those of us that pay close attention to the way Taylor talks about his players. The last guy on the defensive side of the ball, and we could talk about Allen George, Delonte Hood, and some of these depth corners. Could talk about the depth at linebacker because there is a competition there as well. But Joseph Ossai is going to play a little bit in this game. Sounds like his snaps will be somewhat guarded as they're working him back slowly from injury. But talk about an anticipated second preseason debut for a guy that could be a real havoc creator, a real, mid-round defensive lineman of the future. in Joseph Ossai, much like the hopes are for Zach Carter, but we've seen it from Ossai. We've seen him sack Tom Brady, and can he build on that? Can he continue to show those flashes and be really disruptive again against the backups of the backups for the Arizona Cardinals? But that's not all. They're specialists to talk about. I want to talk about these tight ends a little bit as well. Kendrick Pryor, Kwamie Lassiter, maybe specialists, but wide receivers as well. We'll finish up the show with the offense and these specialist battles that will continue in the preseason.
Well, yeah, we got to talk about the specialists, but you mentioned wide receiver, and so you know where I'm going, man. A little wide receiver action. Kwamie Lassiter, let's be honest here. Number 18, wearing, is kind of a sacred number, was a sacred number for quite some time here amongst Bengals fans and among the Bengals with AJ Green. And it's kind of funny because I think Kwamie Lassiter might put on a show against the former number 18 here in Cincinnati, even though AJ Green not going to play on Friday night. Still quite interesting if he's on the sidelines watching a new 18 do work. And look, we've seen Kwamie Lassiter kind of play on all three different teams. He's been on the first team at time with the first team offense, second team, third team, and he's made plays throughout. Frustrated Eli Apple on Wednesday. Does that translate? Is this guy making plays? Is Jake Browning finding him over the middle? Is Brandon Allen connecting with him early? I think Lassiter is going to get a ton of reps. I think Kendrick Pryor is another guy, number 19, Auden Tate's old number, for those wondering. He's flashed over the past week or so, seems to make a couple plays every single day. Those are two guys I got my eye on that could really push here for a roster spot. Now, special teams matters. Will Lassiter be a quality punt returner? He'll probably get some reps there. That matters a ton. But I am curious to see if it translates on offense for these guys, because if they make some plays, it could really force the Bengals' hand here with a successful preseason starting on Friday night.
Yeah, and we should mention Trenton Irwin and Trent Taylor here. Taylor was valuable for the Bengals last year. Even though he wasn't on the 53-man, he was still a valuable player. He was a valuable punt returner when they needed stability at that spot. He converted a 2-point conversion when they needed it. Trenton Irwin helped them beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 4 and was a preseason star, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the guy made plays last year in training camp in the preseason, seemed like every day, every game. And so probably shouldn't forget about him. A little bit of old news going on, and Lassiter and Pryor probably having a better camp, but Trent Taylor, Trenton Irwin, a little bit more established in both of those guys. And we'll see how many receivers the Bengals choose to keep, because then it could get really interesting with guys like Kendrick Pryor and Kwamie Lassiter pushing the back end of the roster. We should probably mention Puka Williams as well, who will be out there probably returning some sort of kicks at some point in this game, and see how he has developed at wide receiver, changing positions and trying to define and carve out a role for himself in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you on Puka. And here's the thing with Lassiter and Pryor, Trent Taylor's on the team. If they had to make a decision today, he's on the team. And so that's why I don't necessarily include him. He guaranteed 100% has the trust at punt returner, showed enough at receiver when they needed him last year. I think without a doubt, he'd make the team today. Can they unseat him? And yeah, he'll play. There's no doubt he'll play on Friday night, but can they do enough to unseat him, specifically Lassiter, because of that punt returner role? That's a question. I'll say this about Trenton Irwin. He's not full go yet. He's still coming back, not 100%. But in one-on-ones, the dude puts guys in a blender. He's beat Eli Apple. He's beat Cam Taylor-Britt. He hasn't gone against Cheeto, I don't believe. But he is good at one-on-one. So, no, I'm not sleeping on him at all. It's just I think they almost have 5 locks, the big 3, Mike Thomas and Stanley Morgan Jr., not necessarily in that order. And then you have 1 to 2 spots. I think Trent Taylor has one of those right now. What else happens here? And so I think that you're right. You got Trenton Irwin, Trent Taylor, Lassiter, Pryor. Now we're at 9. And at max, you have 7 spots. Who pushes for those final 2 spots? And I'm not saying that Mike Thomas or Stanley Morgan Jr. couldn't get unseated. Anything's possible. I think there's a 99.999999% chance that both guys are on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I would feel pretty comfortable saying at least Stanley Morgan Jr., if not also Mike Thomas, are pretty much locked in.
The only reason it's not 100% is because last year Mike Thomas was cut for a day because they were doing some roster maneuvering. So I had to cover my bases there a little bit.
Good hedge. Good hedge. But Stanley Morgan Jr., like some of these guys, I'm going to be curious to see how much they even play with Zach trying to protect some of his big contributors and his starters. Like Stanley Morgan Jr., they probably have a pretty clear vision for his role on offense. I know Jamar Chase doesn't want to come off the field. T. Higgins coming off 2 years really of being injured. I think that Stanley Morgan Jr. is really seen as a valuable player for this team. He's going to play on special teams as well, but it'll be interesting to see how much he plays. Without Drew Sample playing, it's going to be Mitchell Wilcox and Thaddeus Moss, I assume, for the entire first half. I don't think we'll see Hayden Hurst. He's not established, quote unquote, but I mean, he's certainly entrenched, I would say, at this point as a starter. And so Thad Moss and Mitch Wilcox will have a chance to show which of them can do some of that Drew Sample role. Who's better as an H-back? Who's better as a run blocker? Who can still contribute a little bit in the passing game when they need to? And I think Bengals fans probably have been eager to see Thad Moss for a while. We haven't seen a whole lot of Thad Moss in game action, so getting a chance to see him in game action will be pretty exciting as well. And honestly, for those guys, probably a lot comes down to special teams. But if they can distinguish themselves on the offensive side of the ball as well, that doesn't hurt their chances. Certainly doesn't hurt their chances. Let's go to those special teams spots, James. We've been talking about these guys more so as camp has gone on. Cal Adamitis, Clark Harris, Drew Chrisman, Kevin Huber. My eyes personally are on the punters. And, you know, I joked about this the other day. They can have quite a bit of opportunity in the preseason to show their craft. And is Drew Chrisman that much better at punting than Kevin Huber? Because it certainly sounds like in practices, holding has been essentially a wash. And so if that translates to a game and there's a significant difference in punting, that could make things very interesting.
Well, then it's Drew Chrisman's job, honestly. I mean, how could you not pick him? Because if he's better at punting and it's pretty equal holding wise, and so far it has been, and that's what's interesting about this is does that translate now? Because you had the most clutch kicker in the NFL last season, and that's just the reality of what McPherson was. You can't disrupt that. Now, maybe Drew Chrisman and Cal Adamitis, that combination, or Clark Harris, or in Drew Chrisman, maybe that's just as good or better. Maybe it helps Evan even more, and the communication's going to be there, and now you get younger in that room. Who knows? But I think we're going to see all the different combinations. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Clark Harris, and from a holding standpoint, Clark Harris as the long snapper, and then Drew Chrisman as the holder on the first kick of the game. And then you flip it and go Young at long snapper with Cal Adamitis and Kevin Huber as the holder, and really experiment, alternate. I think the alternate punting wise as well. And it's going to be fun. Look, that's usually the boring part of the game. You're not going to be able to blink then. You're not going to be able to get up and go to the fridge yet, ladies and gentlemen, because, well, that's a big part of this preseason battle, of this training camp battle, is what happens at long snapper, which I agree with you, Jake. I think Clark Harris has the edge as of now. And what happens at punter, where I think it's very open. And what I've seen from Drew Chrisman in recent days, wouldn't be shocked at all if he really makes a push for that job.
Exciting times for specialist fans, kicking fans.
Baby.
We teased this before training camp even started. In our training camp preview, we talked about we're going to have our stopwatches out. I think it was Trags had a 4+ second hang time on a Drew Chrisman punt after the day after we were talking about him booming some significantly longer punts than Kevin Huber was hitting. But consistency is going to be very important as well. And so we'll see how that plays out in real game situations, because there have been a number of studies done that say when the stakes are real, when the stakes are higher, specialists perform worse, specifically kickers perform worse in the clutch. There is no such thing as clutch kickers, according to a study by, I think it was PFF Moo. He found something like, and this is pretty tangential at this point, but he found something like kickers only get worse in the clutch unless they're Justin Tucker, and then he's fine. But even Evan McPherson, his findings suggest it got worse in the clutch. And I'd be curious to know the methodology because it felt like McPherson was really clutch for the Bengals last year, and we expect that to continue. Anyway.
Got worse in the clutch. I mean,
according to the study, so that's why I'm curious about the methodology.
Whatever. In the playoffs, he wasn't bad in the clutch.
No.
So
no, he wasn't.
I don't know how he got worse. I mean, for week 5, he was bad in the clutch. And then after that,
maybe all it takes is missing one kick, clutch kick
right?
Or something. Yeah. Like that's why I would need to see the methodology. But anyway, plenty to watch for is the bottom line here. I think this is, for an established team, still plenty of really exciting things, James, as we get to preseason game 1.
Yay or nay on kickers getting walkout music when they're trying to kick the game-winning field goal? Because Evan McPherson went on NFL Network and was in favor of it.
Really?
And so yay or nay? I say yay. I think that'd be really cool. Now,
if you miss the kick though, like that's kind of brutal after the walkout music.
For sure, I get, but it's like if you strike out in baseball, right? After having a really cool,
but they do it every plate appearance in baseball,
to end the game. But his song choice, the little Eminem, "Without Me," which came out when Evan McPherson was probably like 3 or 2.
Have you looked this up?
So no, not that. I haven't looked up what year or what age he was. No.
Without Me, 2009. Does that sound right?
No, Without Me, no.
That's when the official music video was published. We'll have to do some research and get back to you there. Evan McPherson, born in 1999. Anyway, we better get out of here, James. Plenty to watch for in
2002. So he was 3. 2002.
All right. Published to YouTube in 2009, apparently.
There you go. That makes sense. Yeah, YouTube was new then.
Yeah.
And now we're on it. So subscribe.
We'll be back after preseason game 1 with takeaways and instant reactions. So stick around or check out the channel for that. Hit the subscribe button, as James said. Hit the follow button. You'll get that delivered to your device automatically. Until next time, Bengals fans, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day.